Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Multicultural Rural Mental Health Grant Funding Cycle 2 application, the information session. So we're happy you're here, and we can get started. All right. So my name is Rosanna Benali-Sag, and I'm one of the program specialists for the Utah Division of Multicultural Affairs and grants coordinator for this grant. Today's session will provide further information about this next funding cycle. I'll share our new setup for this funding cycle 2 and how we have two separate grants. One is called the Elevate grant, and then the other one is the Journey grant. And so we'll include information about the focus of each of the grants, the criteria. We'll show you the budget template, and then the different sections within the application. Then we'll go over how to access the grants management system to start your application. And then before we begin, we just want to thank the people who made this grant possible. So thank you to Cambia Health Solutions and Utah Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. So with their support to invest in rural communities with mental and behavioral health services, we hear the many impactful stories the funding is making within communities across the state, especially from our current grantees, the ones who are funded right now in the funding cycle 1. And so we have some great stories that have been shared with us and the impact that they're making in their communities because of this grant. And so thank you to Cambia Health Solutions and Utah Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. And then I also want to thank and acknowledge our amazing division team members, my director, Nubia Pena, Jenny Howe, Claudia Loaiza, Dr. Joel Arbizo Zavala, Rami Ahmed, Megan Castleton, Myra Cardoso, Miguel Trujillo, and Jason Carrillo. I want to give special thanks to our team members who are directly supporting the grant management with me. And we also have Jenny, who's the Zoom host, and then Megan, who is running the slides today. But I also want to give thanks to them both, as well as Claudia, Myra, and Miguel, who have been on the back end providing support with the grant management. And then for my director, Nubia Pena, for seeing the vision and expanding our division, and then engaging on our Utah's communities with heart and intention. And then also honoring each of our team members' individual passions. So with my passion is supporting rural and tribal communities, especially when it comes to expanding and creating awareness of resources throughout the state, and making sure there is geographic equity with a lot of the resources that we are offering. So through this grant, I've been able to do just that, and I've been inspired by the impact that is being made with the current grantees from funding cycle 1, just hearing their stories. And then we've designed this grant program in a way that engages more with our grantees to create a sense of community, so a sense of family. So every interaction and chance we have to reach out to our grantees with their projects, we see how impactful they are. And then also it gives us the opportunity to make that connection rather than just through emails or phone calls. So we've been able to make those connections there. And then, so let's get started with our information session. After the overview of the grants and the grant system, it will be followed by us answering a few questions from the chat box. We may not be able to get to a lot of the questions within this session, but just know that we will answer them through a follow-up email. So if you are here, that means you have registered for this event. And so whatever email that you provided there, that's for the follow-up email with information from the questions, and then information from this session as well too will be provided. And then you can also reach out to mcagrants@utah.gov individually, or talk to one of our team members by calling 801-245-7200 to answer any questions about the grant for funding cycle 2. A little bit of housekeeping instructions: attendees can see the presentation and then ask questions in the Q&A box on Zoom. And like I said, we will try and get to a lot of the questions, but the ones that we're not able to get to, or that are a little more, that require a little bit more, maybe possibly research, we will answer that in the follow-up email. So we can go into a description of this grant, just an overall view of what this grant is. So we began last year with this grant program once we got funding from Cambia Health Solutions and Utah Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. And so this grant aims to support those impacted by the mental and behavioral health challenges that have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're wanting this to be a way to encourage Utah rural residents to seek and receive accessible services to address those particular needs. And then this grant also supports the urgent needs to address those challenges, like I said, that were intensified and magnified by COVID-19 in many of our rural communities. And so just to give you an awareness of the types of organizations that we funded in the first cycle, to give you a sense of who we had funded. So we have Alliance Community Services, Asian Association of Utah, Centro de la Familia de Utah, The Family Place Utah, Connect Summit County, Full Circle Intertribal Center, Jewish Family Service, Latino Behavioral Health Services Incorporated, Moab Free Health Clinic, Moab Regional Hospital, Moab Valley Multicultural Center, New Horizons Crisis Center, San Juan School District, their foundation, Seek Haven Family Crisis Center, Southern Utah University, Spy Hop Productions, and then Utah State University Blanding. So those were the grantees for the first funding cycle. And they've been able to share, and part of the grant, we have grantees submit a mid-year report. And just to kind of see where you are with your project, like on your timeline, and then also understanding maybe some of the where you're at as far as progress goes. So one organization, and I'll just share a little bit. I won't go into too much detail just for privacy concerns. And so one organization said that they were able to use the grant funding to expand their program beyond the limited amount of counseling sessions that they were able to offer. And even with those counseling sessions, they had very strict guidelines. And so with the grant, they were able to provide their clients with longer term support beyond those counseling sessions. And then they also were able to help those individuals that didn't have mental and behavioral health services beyond just, I guess, within their capacity. And many of them, it was their first time experiencing mental health services. And so because now they have access. Another organization had said they were able to offer community mental health workshops and then opportunities for family-centered outings. And so through these opportunities, the families have been able to do more engagement in follow-ups with the families. And then with their counseling centers, they were able to increase engagement with their families. And the families were able to do follow-ups with like mental health consultations, and which resulted in the families supporting and empowering their own family members to seek help and to support family when it comes to a concern. And so the organization built that trust to be able to offer that through these events, these family support events. Okay, all right, so just a little bit of the impact with this grant that's already doing. And so we're just very grateful for a lot of the organizations that are working in this field, and then also working in rural communities with sometimes limited resources. And so we're just grateful that there are projects out there that are helping families, especially with mental and behavioral health services. All right, so we will move on to the setup for this year. Last year, it was set up a little bit different. We had just one streamline of grant funding. This year, we have it set up to where we have two different types of grants. So the umbrella is the Multicultural Rural Mental Health Grant. And then under that, we have the Elevate Grant, and then we also have the Journey Grant. And so the focus of the Elevate grant is to support new or existing mental and behavioral health projects in their early phases of implementation. And so with this grant, if you are applying for that, you can apply up to $50,000. And then also the Elevate grant is meant to elevate and bolster an organization's project in hopes of sustainability in their target rural communities. And when we use the term sustainability, we are hoping that with this project, that it's able to move forward with the intention of being in the community for long term. And so that's it's essentially like seed money. So the Elevate grant is to help provide that support there. And then the focus of the Journey grant is to support mental and behavioral health programs that are ready to serve. So for example, there's already a clientele established, the outreach is established, the networking, the programming, the framework of it, like that has already been established. There's already individuals within that program that are participating. And so the grant also supports the expansion of new features or components within an existing program that's in the organization. And so these programs will need to exemplify sustainability within their target rural communities. And so that's the difference between these two grants. And then another thing that I need to make sure I mention is the Journey grant. You can apply up to $100,000. So those two particular grants, because we know there's different levels of projects or mental and behavioral health services, if they're just newly started or they're in the early phases, or there's already well-established programs already in existence in organizations. And so that's the difference there is those two particular grants. And then when we go to the criteria, some of the same criteria went into this current funding cycle. So we did kind of tweak it a little bit, but not too much. It's the same, pretty much the same criteria. So the organizations need to be a nonprofit, a governmental agency, educational institution, and or faith-based religious organization. So with that, you also have to show that you are a 501c3, you have a 501c3, excuse me, determination letter. And then with the government entities or the schools, you just have to show that tax exemption letter. And then on top of that, the faith-based religious organization showing that determination letter as well too. And then we move on to that the projects or programs have to serve rural communities. And that's the whole focus of this grant, is that it has to serve rural communities. And when we say rural, it means a county in the state other than Utah, Salt Lake, Davis, or Weber. And we're using the Department of Human Services definition of rural. And so it's any county outside of those 4 counties right there. And so if there is an organization that is located in Davis, Salt Lake, Utah, and or Weber counties, your project has to make sure it is serving, or program is serving those counties when you're applying. And so those counties are Beaver, Box Elder, Cache, Carbon, Daggett, Duchesne, Emory, Garfield, Grand, Iron, Juab, Kane, Millard, Morgan, Paiute, Rich, San Juan, San Pete, Sevier, Summit, Tooele, Uinta, Wasatch, Washington, and or Wayne. And so your project or program has to serve those counties right there. And then again, your organization is a Utah-based organization, and you have to be providing direct mental and behavioral health services to individuals and families. And then also that you are serving historically and systemically marginalized populations, specifically communities of color, LGBTQIA+ populations, and or those who are linguistically diverse. And then lastly, is that you're an organization that has a commitment to centering equity. And when we talk about equity, We are also referring to the practice of equity, and then also a system that's, not a system, but just the practice of including it within all aspects of your organization. And so with equity, we are, for the purposes of this grant, it's to provide different levels of support based on an individual's or group's needs in order to achieve fairness in outcomes. It's striving to give communities what they need and have historically lacked. Working to achieve equity acknowledges unequal starting places and the need to correct the imbalance. And then again, for the purposes of this grant, we do prioritize equitable practices that focus on multicultural communities. Achieving equity means that people of all races and socioeconomic status are equally seen, heard, valued, respected, and considered in all decision-making processes. So, and that's what we mean when we're talking about equity through this grant. So when you are providing that in your description in the application, we want you to explain how you are centering the practice of equity within your organization and in all aspects. And then I also wanted to just share that with the rural definition, we just want to make sure that you are serving communities that are in rural counties, and that also if you are serving a organization, or if the project is serving a count that's not within the county or the rural definition, we will ask that you return those portion of the funds that are going to that particular county. And so we are very strict on what those rural county means. And so we just want to make sure that is there. And so I do also want to mention the definition to multicultural communities, and all of this information is in the application. And then we will also share this after the webinar session with you in the follow-up email. But the definition of multicultural communities for the purposes of this grant is refers to historically underserved populations, including Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islander, people of color, LGBTQI+, and linguistically diverse communities. And so we hope when you're filling out this application, or when you are looking at your project or your organization, we hope you can think expansively about this and include community experiences with the following, but not exclusive to undocumented communities, refugee communities, low-income communities, etc. So moving on, let's go over the budget template. And so the budget template, so the structure of the budget is that we have operational expenses, and so that there can't exceed 10% of the grant funding award. So whatever funding amount that you are requesting, that it can't exceed 10% of the amount that you're requesting. And so we just want you to make sure you make note of that, because a majority of this grant is we want you to make sure the funding is going towards direct and mental behavioral health services. And so then that way we know that the funding and the support is being provided directly to the families. And so 80% of that should be for the direct mental and behavioral health services expenses. And then after that is the organizational project expense. And so that cannot exceed 10% of the grant funding award that you are requesting. And then we also ask that any other sources of revenue, funding, support. So we talk about sustainability. And so right there is where we want to see, like, if there's any in-kind donations, or if there are any costs that other partners within your community or other partners that you have gathered through this project or program, that you also list that as well. And so that kind of marks for us that, you know, you are being intentional and how you are reaching out to the community, and that your project, that there is a need for your project as well. And so Megan, I'm going to share the project budget template. So if I can have the screen. Okay, all right. All right, let me move this. Okay, so this here is the project budget template. And so this is where you will enter in all of your organization when the project start date is, if it doesn't align with our fiscal year. So our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. So essentially those are the dates that most people will put. However, if you have only a particular time frame that you're going to be implementing your project or program, or a part of your program, that's where you would put those dates. And then here is where you would put the amount you're requesting for the Elevate grant or the Journey grant. And so then you would put that in there. And then any other contributions you're receiving from donors, from other maybe grants that you're receiving for your particular project or program, that's where you would list that here. And we would like for you to put maybe where those grant funds are coming, because we do look at if you're receiving funds from Cambia Health Solutions as well too, because they give funds to other organizations as well. And so we just want to make sure that we're being very intentional, that we are offering funds to expansively across the state. And then the next section is the expenses. And so that's where I was talking about. So operational expenses, so that could include like rent, utilities, technology equipment, and informational technology. And so that's where you would put that. And then direct and mental behavioral health services. So that's like project staff costs, translation. So things that are directly related to providing services to individuals within your project or program. And then the organizational capacity. So again, you can't exceed 10% of the grant funding. And then that can include things like professional development. And if you have any other questions about that, we do have a frequently asked questions, and we'll have that available on the website, on our website. And then if you have any questions, just feel free to email mcagrants@utah.gov. And then just total up all of your expenses. And we do want you to, so the first part of this template, we do ask that you save this as an Excel file, and then submit it within the application through the grants portal. Okay. Stop sharing. Thank you, Megan. And the deadline, we're going to open the application on Monday, April 18th, and we're looking about 1 o'clock to get that open. And so that will be open for about a month. So both grants will be open at the same time. You can apply simultaneously for the grant, but also just know that they have to be separate focuses of the whatever you're doing. So if it's a project for the Elevate grant, it has to be different than what you're doing from the program for the Journey grant that you're applying for. So it has to be different. And then also know that we most likely won't grant we most likely won't grant an organization both of the grant funding. And so, and we just want to be mindful that we're being expansive with the funding, and that it's getting to multiple communities throughout Utah. And so we just want to be mindful that, that the funding is being used expansively across the state. And then the closing date is May 20th at 6 p.m. And again, throughout that time, if you have questions, just reach out to us, and one of us will be willing to answer. Yeah, and we've already had people ask varying questions. And so we try to get back as soon as possible within the day or the next day, depending on the amount of emails that we receive. So those are the deadlines. And then right now, what we'll do is we'll go through the grants portal, and just so you know how to access it. Okay, so this is the website that you'll go to. It's our department. So our department is the Utah Department of Cultural and Community Engagement. And so that's the umbrella to all of the grants that are administered through our department. And then through us, you'll log in through there. If you're a very new applicant to anything within our department, then you'll create a username and a password. And then it'll take you to the next, here, I'll just show you. So it'll take you to the next screen, which will have you fill out a request a user account. And then after that, oh, that's only a few. And then just so you're aware, if you forgot your password, if you are a user before, and you forgot your password, you will click forgot password, and then it'll provide you a temporary password, and then use that to create a new one. We have had cases, rare cases, where for whatever reason, users were just not able to get in. And so for that, we would just ask you to reach out to us, and we can figure out what the situation is and see how to navigate that. Okay. All right. Okay. So that's the grant portal user, and I'm going to show you sort of what the application will look like on your end. Okay. All right. So when you actually get into the grant, the application, so this one is for the Elevate grant. So this is what the first section will look like. It'll ask you the funding request, the application title, which is your project or program title, and then the description there, your organization's description, and then there's some guidelines here to help you through the process. And then it also helps you understand, you know, what we mean by equity, and then also maybe some, I guess, mental and behavioral health services that we are considering for this grant. And then it also provides contact for that. And so as we're looking at that, oh, okay, so I just need to enter something quickly. But as we're looking at that, you'll enter in your information, and as you can see, there are areas where they are required. And so if you don't fill that out, then it won't let you move on to the next phase. Okay. All right. And so when you enter in that information, it'll take you to the second section, which is the general organization information and eligibility. And so that's where you'll put the name of your organization, what category you fit. As we had mentioned, we are funding nonprofit, governmental entities, and then schools, and then faith-based organizations. So if you want to put our county health departments, and so if you want to put that, whatever your category is, and then if you don't fit that category, if there's a unique situation, then that's where you would put that. And then you would enter in your EIN number, and then your organization director's name, your organization director's phone number, and then are you applying on behalf of your organization? So for example, if you are a grant writer for your organization, then you would click yes. If you are not, then you would just click no. If you are a grant writer or volunteer submitting this application on behalf of the organization, so that's where we would ask for information regarding the contact name, email address, and then the phone number. And then we ask that you put your mission in there. And then does your mailing address listed match your W-9? And so just make sure that is correct, because when it comes time, for example, if you get funded, we just want to make sure the address aligns, because when those checks are written or issued out, they have to match. And so it just makes the process a little bit easier. So overall, there's about 6 to 7 sections. Let's see, 6 of those sections are a lot of it's narrative, and then the 7th section is where you upload documents. So that's like your budget template, and then like your W-9, things like that. So we ask questions for this section on mental and behavioral health, your project, your description on what you're going to be submitting. And then we ask that you put what is the total amount of your project budget, describe your mental and behavioral health project, what type of service of mental and behavioral health service are you providing, and then your project timeline. And we also ask that you please be as descriptive as you can. There is a 5,000 character limit. And so just make sure that you provide as much information as you can. So when the evaluation committee reviews it, then they can understand more of your project. And then we ask about project goals. How are you going to accomplish them? And this is where we would like a lot of information too, because then when it comes time to the mid-year report, then we can go back and look. And then once it comes to the mid-year report, we can see where the progress that you're at. And then as far as evaluation, we will evaluate the success of your project. And we want you to be descriptive again. How will you track your progress? What tools will be used for your evaluation? And then a question about describing the outcomes of your project, and then communication strategies. How will you reach out to your community members, or if you already have an established, how do you maintain that communication with them? And then this here is, we want to understand which counties you are targeting. And then at the beginning, I think it was in the 2nd section, we do ask, because we want to understand why you are wanting this project or program in the communities that you're targeting. Because if you understand the needs within those communities, then we can understand like why this project is needed in your community. So, and then we move on to the section of project sustainability. And that's where we ask things like, what is your long-term big picture after this grant, the particular grant is depleted? And then the next question is about community partners. Who are your community partners with your project in those target counties that you are going into? So definitely make sure again, all of these questions have a 5,000 character limit. Multicultural community, the next section is multicultural community and rural community experience. So there we want to understand how you have been working with multicultural communities and rural communities. So for example, this question here, what has your organization been doing to address the impact of mental and behavioral health among multicultural individuals in rural communities? And then rural communities, what is your program or your project's drive to serve in those particular counties that you listed? And then as far as equity, within your own practice in the organization, how are you centering equity throughout different parameters in your organizational day-to-day? Is it, just explain that there. And then we move on to the project financial information. And then that's where we want to understand your budget. And here you will answer yes or no, that you are going to submit, if you are granted, that you will submit a mid-year and a final report with detailed actual expenses, project outcomes. So just a status report of where you're at with your project. And then the next question is about your project budget. We do understand that sometimes when we look at project budgets or program budgets, that sometimes it can just be numbers and we don't understand the whole story, or there needs to be more context to it. And so this is an opportunity for you to explain the numbers that you are putting in your project template. And so evaluators are going to look at that, and then also your budget, the budget that you're proposing. And so definitely important there. And then what is your plan for developing and maintaining financial sustainability with your project? So again, going back to sort of that sustainability piece, what are you doing to capture maybe other funding sources, maybe support from partners within your community, in-kind donations or funding that they're putting forth to your project or program. And so definitely explain that there. And then this next section, we lumped it all together to make it a little bit easier. So you'll submit your project budget here, and then you'll submit your 990 or your financial statements here, and then also your W-9, and then also if you are a nonprofit, your determination letter, and then tax information, tax exemption form, the certificate. And so that's where you'll put that. Now I do have to mention, this is the Elevate. And so the Journey grant, I just also want to mention that with the Journey grant, you are going to submit a video, a 2-minute video explaining your program and what the program does. So the mental behavioral health services. And so then that way the evaluators have a better understanding of your program. And it just helps sort of put more context to the program that you have. So that will only be for the Journey grant. The Elevate grant, we are not requiring a video. So, because we do understand that the Elevate grant is essentially like seed money and to support kind of uplift projects or organizations. So, so you may not have that previous information or context for that project. So. Right, and then once you've done all that, then you'll come to this part here. And as you can see here, this will let you know if you have missed one. So if you have a required question that you didn't answer, an X, a circle with a X in the middle, and it's the background is red, that will show up and it'll let you know like you are missing this piece here. But if you have green check marks all the way down, then you are good to go. And then the gray circle just means that you are it's not a required question. Okay, all right, so for example, this is showing that I haven't uploaded any documents. Okay, and then after that, you will just submit the funding. You will have this little print PDF. So if you do want a copy of it, and I do recommend that you make a copy of your completed application just so you have it on record. And so you would click that there, and then you would be able to save it or print it. So that is the walkthrough there. Again, this is where you'll start out. Again, if you are a new applicant, create your own account. And then we will, if you have any questions, again, just reach out to us. If you run into any issues, we will be able to help you with that. Okay. All right, and then Megan, I'm going to stop sharing. All right, so we can move on to the questions portion. Okay, so we have a few questions. It says, if our population we serve are not in any of the rural counties, can we still apply? Okay, so again, this grant is for for rural counties. And so you can still apply, but if we see that it's not serving rural counties, then we may not consider it. Let's see, the next question is, would you please describe the difference between the Elevate and Journey grant again? The Elevate grant, oh, you said, sorry, I missed the opening date of application. Okay, so with the question, the difference between the Elevate and the Journey grant. So the Elevate grant, you can apply up to $50,000. With that grant, that is, again, an opportunity for organizations who are in the early stages of their project or it's a new project to help sort of bolster up that in hopes for long-term sustainability. And again, you can apply up to $50,000 with that one. And then the Journey grant, that one is for organizations that have already programmed mental and behavioral health programs that are implemented and embedded in their organization already. So they are already serving clients. They have an established clientele, networks. You know, they're already providing services through that program. And so that one you can apply up to $100,000. So that's the difference there between both of those grants. As far as the application process, the Journey grant is the one we're requiring a 2-minute video, and then the Elevate grant, if we're not requiring a video for that one. So I hope that answers that question. If not, definitely send us an email. Let's see, and I think the same person said, sorry, I missed the opening date of application. So the opening date of the application is Monday, April 18th at 1:00 p.m. So yeah, and then it closes May 20th. All right. Let's see, Carolina said, I would like to ask if you consider support groups and prevention mental behavioral or mental health programs as part of the project that the grant could finance. Again, I would recommend looking at the guidelines on our website. Yeah, I mean, we do consider that as support groups, but I think what matters is the explanation of how you're implementing it within your project or your program. So the more detail you can provide is very helpful. And then Gloria said, can we get the application in a Word or PDF format? Yes, you can. However, we do require that you do submit it through the grants portal. And then another question from Gloria, can you go over the counties, rural counties again, please? Okay, let me go back to that really quickly. So it's any county. Oh, thank you, Megan. So it is any county that is not Utah, Salt Lake, Davis, or Weber. And so all the ones that are listed here, so Beaver, Box Elder, Cache, Carbon. So it's pretty much most of the counties that are outside the Wasatch Front. Okay, all right. And we are at 1 minute left. And thank you for the questions. Thank you for attending. If you have any other questions or you just need to touch base, definitely reach out at mcagrants@utah.gov or call 801-245-7210. And we would be happy to answer any questions that you have. Yeah, so we're just happy that you're here and we look forward to your application. So thank you very much, and hope you have a great weekend. And we'll talk. We'll look forward again. We'll look forward to your application. Okay, thank you.